from PRX.
Friends beyond the binary, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, whether you're a star kid or a kid who loves stars, or you're a star, or you're a kid, or you're neither, or you're neither. If you're a little bit sleepy and you want a taste of a starry sky, but a little bit more, without the action, like a cloudy, starry sky, this podcast is coming to you across the deep, dark night. I'm the clouds and you're the stars. It's time for Sleep With Me. The podcast doesn't make any sense. It puts you to sleep. All right, everybody, it's Scoots here, and I'm talking about a brand new sponsor, Everyday Dose. And if you listen to the show, you know how much I love coffee, but it's complicated, right? I love the smell, the steps of making it in the morning, the quiet time I have alone before I get my day started. But somewhere between the first cup and the second cup, I hit a wall, right? I'm drinking enough coffee to try to give me a jolt of energy, but it doesn't last. And then I start to get that edge, I'm jittery, I'm distracted. Later in the day, I start to lose focus. And then I go back to, wait a second, should I just drink 1 cup? Should I drink 3? Should I drink 4? Was it worth it? Like, what are the benefits? And you also know I'm someone that loves to tinker. I love to play around with stuff. I love testing out new gadgets, upgrades to my routine, doing things smarter. And I was like, man, I wish my coffee was smarter, right? I wish my coffee had an upgrade. Because if regular coffee's like a flip phone, what if there was a version of coffee out there that was like a flagship phone? Something that's like coffee, but without the downsides. And that's when I found Everyday Dose. Everyday Dose is coffee plus benefits. They combine high-quality coffee with powerful ingredients like lion's mane and chaga, collagen protein, nootropics, to fuel your brain, boost focus, and give you clean, sustained energy all day long. It tastes just like coffee without the downside. No crash, no jitters, just clean, sustained energy. Right now, for Black Friday, get 61% off your first Coffee Plus starter kit, a free A2 probiotic creamer, and over $100 in free gifts. Plus, enter for a chance to win $100 cash or get your entire order refunded. Visit everydaydose.com/sleep or use code SLEEP at checkout. Thanks, everybody. Sleep With Me podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. Hey everybody, this is Scoots here. This message is for people who support the show on Sleep With Me Plus. So if you're hearing this message and you support the show on Sleep With Me Plus, you shouldn't be hearing this message because this is in the ad-supported feed that I'm running this message. So please get all your Sleep With Me Plus content set up. It should be in your email if you just search for Sleep With Me Plus or Supercast in your email. You could always reach me through the contact form on our website because I don't want you missing out. You have every episode as it comes out, ad-free, the full episode. Then every episode as it comes out, the story-only episode in a separate story-only podcast. There's bonus shows, read with me shows. If you support it, if you're a Boar Bestie or Boar Friend, you get all intros come out twice a month, an all-night compilation, like a 4-hour compilation episode. And those feeds go so far back. We designed Sleep With Me Plus with super listeners in mind, or super fans or people that love the podcast. So if you listen all night long, you know what's perfect? The ad-free episodes. If you fall asleep fast, you've got so many options, story-only episodes, but you don't have to worry about anything interrupting, especially if you fall asleep fast. You can really build your playlist however you listen, if you listen a lot, but make sure you have everything set up. And also, if you haven't checked out Sleep With Me Plus, there is a 7-day trial, so check it out and test that out. Test out the story-only episodes if you listen all night long. If you fall asleep fast, test out the ad-free feed. If you love all intros, check out all intros. I think there's 200-300 episodes. In the bonus feed, there's on some Saturdays, we put out a Posty Super Deluxe, which is experimental takes on episodes. episodes. There's Fearless Flyer episodes that have only been released on Sleep With Me Plus and Patreon. There's Ray episodes. There's tons of stuff to discover, and all your old favorites are there. And you could do all that if you have. Oh, actually, either way, go to sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. You could sign up for a trial, or then you could log in and get everything set up right there. Go to sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. If you're already supporting the show there, log in, add all of those podcasts to your podcast app, and you're good to go. Thanks, everybody. Hey, are you up all night tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep? Well, welcome. This is Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. We do it a bedtime story. All you need to do is get in bed, turn out the lights, and press play. I'm going to do the rest. What I'm going to attempt to do is create a safe place where you could set aside whatever's keeping you awake, whether that's thoughts, things on your mind that you're thinking about. So thoughts, feelings, anything emotionally coming up for you. Maybe they're related to those thoughts. Maybe they're just there. It could be physical sensations, changes in time or temperature or schedule, routine. Maybe you work the second or the third shift. Maybe it's something else. Whatever it is that's keeping you awake, I'd like to take your mind off of that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send my voice across the deep, dark night. I'm going to use lulling, soothing, creaky, dulcet tones, pointless meanders, superfluous tangents. And I guess basically what that means is I'm going to go off topic. I'm going to get mixed up. I'm going to repeat myself. I'm going to use words that I'm going to misuse words. I'm going to mix words up, use them in the wrong places, all those things. It's interesting when you think about sentience in words and sentience. Is the sentient sentence? If there was a sentient sentence, I would be in big doo doo, because the sentences and the letters would say, Scooter, you're on our list. You're not at the top of the list. We got a lot of other stuff to deal with, but you're in there. You're a bit of you're a word vandal. And I'd say, oh boy, can we use that isn't that I think I used this in an intro a while ago. I would say, what's a lighter version of vandal? I wouldn't say I'm the Banksy of words. You're right about that. I guess I don't have the vocabulary to be more than I'm just a word vandal, but not a big time one, like an amateur one. And all I do is kind of, take a word that, is straightforward, and I say, what does that mean? I take a word like I perplexion. Oh, but if you're new, hello, regular listeners. When was the last time I talked about word vandals? Despite the connotations, vandal is a nice word. It really is. Obviously it rhymes with candle and mandolin. If you're giving me some space to make up, but you say, well, that's actually doesn't rhymes with the beginning of mandolin. What about mantle? Not really. You're right. So sorry. So that's new listeners. Hey, I'm glad you're here. Let me give you some information, because this podcast is a bit different than most other podcasts, even most sleep podcasts, as a matter of fact. And reason being is that why is this different? Well, a couple of things. One, this is not a podcast you really listen to, or you don't need to listen. You could listen, but you really don't. Clearly, if you've been listening for the past 4 or 5 minutes, you say, oh, okay, this person is not he's serious. He's about as serious as Yahoo serious. And that's a reference that even people that were around in the 80s wouldn't get. But he says things like Yahoo serious, and they have meaning to him. Yeah, but so this is a podcast you kind of barely listen to. I'm here to keep you company while you fall asleep. So this is kind of like a podcast you look at like clouds. or, you know, like I don't know, you just kind of barely pay attention. I'm here to be soothing, not quite background noise, but you'll kind of see as you develop like a regular habit of listening to Sleep With Me. If you do, the other thing is this podcast is just not for everybody. It does take a few tries to get used to, so kind of see how it goes. But most regular listeners say, yeah, it took me 2 or 3 tries to realize I don't need to pay attention. It never really gets started. So just going to give it a few tries and see how it goes. I think I said that already. He repeats himself a lot, and then he gets mixed up. It's all part of the process. So it's a podcast you don't really listen to. It also doesn't really put you to sleep. I'm here to keep you company while you fall asleep, not so much like I'm here to take your mind off stuff. But if you can't sleep, I'm here for a full hour plus. So I'm here to keep you company whether you're awake or asleep. I'm here to be your boar friend, your boar bae, your boar bud, your boar bestie, your boar bruh. If you're you know, between, you know, South LA, San Diego area, you know, any coastal, you know, any area where people say boar bruh, you know, I could be that. But so, yeah, I'm just here to keep you company while you fall asleep. So those are 2 things for new listeners. If you're skeptical or doubtful, that is totally reasonable, because why wouldn't you be? If you've tried other stuff like most of us have to fall asleep, and you said, well, that worked once or twice, it didn't work again, or it didn't work at all. Yeah, you can be skeptical. I mean, this is a very different thing. And leaning into that skepticism, a few more things. Another thing that throws people off is the structure of the show. So I'm going to kind of explain to you the structure of the show. Show starts off with a greeting. Friends beyond the binary, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. So you feel seen and welcome. Then there's listener support for the listeners. Then there's support for the show so it can be free. Then there's the intro. And the intro goes from like minute 6 to minute 8, from minute 6 or 8 to around minute 10 to 20 to 15 to 18 to 17 to 6, somewhere between, you know, 10 and 20 minutes long, usually on the 20-minute side. And the intro serves a purpose because a lot of people, and understandably, they have very strong feelings about the intro because they say, what are you doing? Like, and I'd say, yeah, like, I understand. Like, you have strong feelings about the intro because it's very divergent from what you expect. You expect someone to get to the point and to put you to sleep and not, you know, and that's, our show eventually does that when you stop paying attention to me. So that's the part of the intro serves as like, so new people know. I don't know. So I guess I can do an example. It's a show within a show. I say, well, I'm going to try to explain what the podcast is, but I'm not really good at that, even though I've done it 1,000+ times. Then I'm going to get mixed up. I'm going to go off topic, and eventually I'll kind of try to wrap it up. But so that's for the new listener. You say, oh, okay, I kind of get it, but I don't really understand. I say, well, boy, you're onto something now. But as you become a regular listener, it becomes part of your bedtime routine. And so a lot of regular listeners, they're getting ready for bed, or they're doing some sort of wind down, maybe drawing or sitting, or, you know, they might be on the couch. They might be paging through a magazine or a picture book, you know, some sort of gentle activity, or just sitting around or getting in bed and getting comfortable. But what I found is, for the majority of listeners, not everybody, yeah, there are people that skip the intro or that fall asleep right away, or that turn the show on in the middle of the night or listen all night. But for the majority of listeners, this part of the podcast, it gives you some distance between the day and the night and helps you wind down and slowly kind of get ready for bed, to start to unwind. Well, I always use the analogy of a landing strip because it's like you're coming in for a landing. And then also but the intro is also the taxiing. Nobody appreciates the taxiing after landing. If planes only served to park so you could fall asleep, you'd say, even then it would be unappreciated because you say, okay, I just want to get to my gate and get out. And I said, well, no, we're going to wait a little while, and then we're going to drive over. Oh, no, wrong one. They said Z14. I'm at F14. And looks like somebody's parked there. And you see, didn't we leave like 4.5 hours ago? Like they didn't, like what do you mean somebody's parked there? I guess but this is true. This is stuff that goes through my mind. But in this case, you say, oh, but we're not going anywhere. You'd say, okay. I guess it's hard to create an analogy out of something that would never happen or doesn't make it. You say, okay, now we're at gate Z14, everybody. I'm just going to talk now. And I'm going to tell you about the air. Oh boy, and there's only 4 of you. It's such a roomy place. Unexpected airline. The airline that puts you to sleep because we don't go anywhere except when it's time to wake up, we'll go to another gate gently, and then you get a full breakfast, and it's great. That's the imaginary airline. So that's what the intro is kind of like. It doesn't make any sense. You say, what? I say, exactamundo. It just goes on and on and on to ease you into bedtime. And to give you a chance to slowly fall asleep. I guess because some people say, well, what do you mean? You got the greeting, then you got the sponsors, and then you got this long intro. How come you don't just get to the story? And I'd say after doing the show for a long time and even before doing the podcast, it's like when you're supposed to fall asleep, it's pretty tough. So with Sleep With Me, sleep kind of sneaks up on you and you drift. Next thing you know, you're at breakfast tomorrow. And you say, I got this great idea, hon. Oh, yeah, tell me about it. An airplane that doesn't go anywhere. It's like a train, or we could do a train. You say, what do you mean? Well, you get on the plane, and it's got beds and stuff, and then it goes around. Maybe it goes a little bit faster, then it goes to a gate and parks. Or maybe it just drives around all night, because that might be a nice rocking motion. Probably, we'll figure out we'll have a run on solar, stored solar energy or something, or whatever. But I think Scooter was talking about that in the podcast, but not in a concise way, like you're saying, hon. Oh yeah, maybe. I thought he was talking about paper biplanes or something. So that's what the intro does. Then there's business between the intro and the show. And then that's what keeps the podcast free again. And then there's the story. Tonight will be a Star Kid Stan cast. Believe it or not, written or prepared by my daughter, who's a fan of Star Kid. So first you'll find out what's Star Kid. And then we'll talk about the history of Star Kid and how I became a Star Kid fan. Or Stan, that's what the new, by the time this comes out, I say, Scoots, that was so 2019, I say, or 28. I said, well, yeah, now it's time for me to adopt it. I'm a late adopter. And usually by the time I adopt something, it's right before it becomes back again, like a year or two after. So once I've moved on again. So then we'll do that. Then there's some thank yous at the end. So that's the structure of the show. The only other thing to know is the reason I make the show. One, I have trouble falling asleep, last night it was staying asleep. I was tossing, turning, I was baffled too. Because even though I follow these routines in my own advice, I said, what do you mean? It feels like I had 40 pots of coffee, like right around 12:30. And all I had to my mind was, so I know how it feels in the deep dark night, and I know how it feels when you're tired or overtired. And if I can help with that, that would be great. But I also believe if you get a good night's sleep, our world's going to be a better place to live in. And that is cool for me to be a part of too. Like if I can help you so you can live a bit fuller life because you're rested, that makes the whole world better. At least that's what I believe. So I'm here because you deserve a good night's sleep, and I know how it feels when you don't get one. So I just really want to help. I really appreciate you coming by, checking the show out if you're new. You're a nice driver. I really want to help you fall asleep, and here's a couple of ways I'm able to do it for you free twice a week. Thanks. Hey everybody, this is Scoots, and this message is only for super fans of the podcast. People that, particularly if you listen all night long or you fall asleep fast, listen 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 nights a week, or you've been listening longer than a year, longer than 3 years. If that's not the case, this is not a message directed at you. But if you're in one of those groups, you're just like, this podcast has changed my life so much. I do have to ask you, would you miss the podcast if it's gone? And if the answer's no, or nah, I'd find something else, or yeah, no, I have 3 sleep backup podcasts, don't worry about it. But if you would miss this podcast if it's gone, and you have not considered supporting the show on Sleep With Me Plus, we really do need your support. We've been trying to get it since April, and have been really working hard at just getting your attention. And it's fine if you've decided not to support the podcast, but if you've considered it and are putting it off, don't put it off any longer, because if you'd miss the podcast if it's gone, and you haven't considered supporting the show on Sleep With Me Plus, I mean, not only do you get tons of amazing bonus content, but it's what keeps the show around. So if you'd miss the show if it's gone, and you haven't considered supporting the show on Sleep With Me Plus, please try it out right now. Right now. Don't wait till tomorrow. Set up the bonus content tomorrow. But if you'd miss a show, if it's going to take action right now, sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. Test it out. See what you think. And become a part of the future of this show. And it'll be around. That's at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. Thanks. Friends beyond the binary, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is the second time you get to hear me say that. Welcome, because this episode is constructed from an intro from the past and our Read With Me episodes here. It's a Frankie and Victor episode with our friend Frank and his, so I'm reading from the book Victor and Frankie, also known as a famous Mary Shelley novel. And this is a little bit different than episodes we've done with Sleep With Me, but we tested this out on Sleep With Me Plus. It was so popular, we wanted to bring it to everyone. So it's me reading through a book, also paraphrasing, making stuff sleepy, but it's not perfectly sleepy. I mean, just like everything else we make, you know. It exists within this world, but it's pretty chill. So I hope you enjoy it. And without further ado, more of Victor and Frankie. Thanks, everybody. Chapter 17. The being finished speaking and fixed his look upon me in the expectation of a reply. But I was bewildered, perplexed, and unable to arrange my ideas sufficiently to understand the full extent of his proposition. He continued, "You must create a partner for me with whom I can live in the interchange of those sympathies necessary for my being. This you alone can do, and I demand it of you as a right which you must not refuse to concede." The latter part of his tale had kindled anew in me in the irritability that had kind of lowered while he was telling me about that peaceful life with those cottagers. I was kind of picturing myself in the cottage. I mean, a little bit, I said, well, could I be friends with those people in the cottage, or would they more be friends with me? Seemed a little cramped, the cottage, compared to, you know, what I'm used to. But, and I said, well, I would prefer to be the star of the cottage, but I mean, I wasn't totally listening to my belief-based being either. When I was thinking about that, I said, well, I think Sweet Sweetie would love me. And I'm, you know, would I talk to Sweet Sweetie about, you know, my knowledge or just my natural charm? And so now that he was bringing it, I thought it was about me, and now he's bringing it back and making. He said, "Are you making requests of me? Tell me more relaxing stuff to relax me and help me fantasize." So that really got on my nerves, and I said, "I do refuse it, and nothing you could do, even wagging your finger at me, or thinking of me unkindly shall extort a consent from me. You may render me the most frowny-faced of all people, but you shall never make me base in my own eyes. Shall I create another leaf-based being like yourself, who comes here and makes, requests of me? That could be, think about that. Two heaps of compost wandering the world. Think about the dismay. Be gone. I have answered you, and you could do whatever you wish, but I will never consent. You are in the wrong, replied the leaf-based being. I'm not demanding anything. I am content to reason with you. Like, I'm not a bad guy, whatever you want to call it, leaf-based guy. I don't know, a compost being. I'm just down and out, man. Am I not shunned by everybody, all human beings? You, my creator, you said you'd spread my leaves around the ground. And I believe you even said you'd dance on them with glee as you spread them to and fro. So remember that and tell me why I should pity a person more than they pity me. You wouldn't feel, you don't sound like you'd feel too bad if you spread my leaves around and then the wind blew them all away. And then, I don't even, would I still be sentient if I was a billion different leaves? Or I know I'm not a billion leaves, but, I wouldn't be able to walk. I wouldn't be able to talk. And that would be by you and then no, you danced me into non-existence. Shall I respect a person that does that to me? Let him live with me in the interchange of kindness. And instead of, not kind acts, I would bestow every benefit upon him with tears of gratitude at his acceptance. But I'm getting the sense that cannot be. Human senses are insurmountable, and they seem to be bare, maybe the odor of compost, or just the idea of sentient, in your words, compost, are barriers to our union. Yet mine shall not be the submission. I can't just sit idly by either. If I cannot inspire love, and you turn a blind eye to me, you, my creator, I'll have to, we'll have to go from being, a relationship will change, and it won't be friends, it'll be, non-friennies, not frienny poos at all, rivals even. Because my creator, I do swear, inextinguishable, I got strong feelings too. Just because I'm a leaf-based being. Have a care. I'm very persistent. I I found you, buddy. So I'll put it to work. I'll put this leaf-based being to, by the way, I learned a language by sitting in a hovel and just listening in. So I won't, can't stop, won't stop, I think they say. And I'll make you wonder why you turned me away, and your frown will not turn upside down. And Victor back here, he that's what he closed with, and he seemed to shake with a sense of non-happiness towards me. His leafy face, which, thinking back on it, could be considered cute at times, but at this time was wrinkled into contortions of irritation. His brow was furrowed. Oh boy, was that furrow deep. But then he took a breath and calmed himself and proceeded. Okay, Victor, I intended to reason. This passion is detrimental to me. you do not reflect that you are the cause of the success. If any being felt emotions of benevolence towards me, I should return to them 100 and 100-fold kindness. For that one being's sake, I would make peace with the whole kind, one nice person in this entire globe. Now I indulge in dreams of bliss that cannot be realized. What I ask of you is reasonable and moderate. I demand someone to spend time with, someone that's like me, I guess, that could relate to me and know what it's like to be made of leaves and whatever, other stuff. A friend, like Woody had Buzz and Buzz had Woody, and they also had their other friends. I'm just asking for Wood, or I don't know, Bo Peep, maybe even. The gratification is small, but it is all that I can receive, and it shall content me. It is true, we'll be walking heaps of compost, and I know Fraggle Rock hasn't come out, it doesn't exist at this time, and even with its existence, it wasn't exactly a glorification of walking sentient compost heaps, and even Oscar. But maybe we could be separated from the world, and on that account we shall be more attached to one another. Our lives will not be happy, but they will be harmless and free from the misery I now feel. Oh, my Creator, make me happy. Let me feel gratitude towards you for this one benefit. Let me see that I excite the sympathy of one existing thing. Do not deny me this request. Victor here. I was moved. I kind of shuddered when I thought about the consequences of my consent, but I felt that there was some justice in his argument. His tale and the feelings he now expressed proved to him to be a being of fine sensations, and I did not, as his maker, owe him, or didn't I, as his maker, owe him all portion of happiness that it was in my power to bestow. He saw my change of feeling on my face and continued, "If you consent, neither you nor anybody else will ever see us again. We're not trying to be on TV like Oscar or Fraggle Rock or anything else. We'll go somewhere far, far away. And, we don't eat the same things anyway, so it's like not like I'm going to mess with anybody's stuff. Acorns and berries afford me sufficient nourishment, and my companion will be of the same nature as myself, and will be content with the same fare. We'll be cooking, and we'll leave some for the squirrels. Don't you worry. We shall make our bed of dried leaves. The sun will shine on us as it does on every other human, and it will ripen our food. The picture I present to you is peaceful and human, and you must feel that you could deny it only in the wantonness of power and need to control things in your own judgments. Pitiless as you've been towards me, I can now see compassion in your eyes. Let me seize the favorable moment and persuade you to promise what I so ardently desire." So I said, you propose, said I, Victor, to fly away from the habitations of humans, to dwell in places where, only, forest friends will be your companions. But I don't buy it. How can you, who long for the love and sympathy of humans, persevere in isolation? Talk about these pop culture icons I'm not even familiar with. I believe you will return again and seek kindness to human beings. And again, unfortunately, because you're a compost pile, you'll meet with their detestation, and your passions will be renewed. and then you'll have a companion to aid you in the task of, I don't even know what you'd be up to. And this may not be, but I cease to argue the point. I cannot consent. And he came back at me. How incontinent are your feelings? But a moment ago, you were moved by my representations. And why again do you harden yourself to my complaints? I swear to you, by the earth in which I inhabit, and by you that made me, that with the companion you bestow, I will quit the neighborhood of humans, and dwell, as it be, in the quietest and most distant of places. My passions will have fled, for I shall meet with sympathy. My life will flow quietly away, and I shall only have positive thoughts of my Maker. Victor here. His words had a strange effect upon me. I compassionated him and sometimes felt a wish to console him. But when I looked upon him and I saw the filthy mass that moved and talked, I said, wait a second here. I can't trust compost that's sentient. And my feelings were altered, and I started to loathe him again. I tried to stifle these sensations, and I thought as not to sympathize with him. I mean, on one side, I had no right to withhold from him the small portion of happiness which was yet in my power to bestow. You swear, I said, to be harmless, but haven't you already been rounding about and talking to people and convincing them to cross to other realms? Shouldn't that make me distrust you? May not even this be a feint in which you'll increase your triumph by affording a wider scope for your, whatever you're up to? And he said back to me, what? How is this? I must not be trifled with, and I demand an answer. If I have no ties and no affections, whatever, then I'll have nothing but, a sentient heap of compost can be quite irritable, for it gets very warm in here. The love of another will be replaced by something else, and I shall become a thing whose whole existence no one will know about me if I go away. My vices are the children of a forced solitude that I abhor, and my virtues will be necessarily arise when I am in communion with a partner. I shall feel the affections of a sensitive being and become linked to the chain of existence and events from which I am now excluded. I paused some time to reflect on all he had related and the various arguments which he had employed. I thought of the promise of virtues which he had displayed on the opening of his existence, and on the subsequent unpleasantness and loss of all kindly feeling from other people he had ran into. Even his protectors, the so-called protectors, had manifested towards him. But he was strong. Leaf-faced beings were stronger than I had, and that was not admitted in my calculations. I mean, a being that could exist in ice caves and glaciers and hide and live in ridges and mountains and inaccessible precipices. He also possessed faculties that could be tough to cope with. I don't want to have to, if I was going to spread his leaves around until he went to another realm, I don't have to go climbing around or be cold. And so after a moment of long pause and reflection, I concluded that the justice due to both him and my fellow humans demanded of me that I should comply with his request. If he's gone far, far away. Turning to him, therefore, I said, I consent to your demand on your solemn oath to quit Europe forever. As long as you're not, basically, and every other place in the neighborhood of human beings, as soon as I shall deliver into you a partner who will accompany you into exile. I swear, the being cried, by the sun, by the blue sky of heaven, and by the fire of love that burns in my heart. Unless it's like an apple mixed with pea soup or whatever that's in there, that if you grant my prayer, while they exist, you shall never behold me again. Depart to your home and commence your labors. I shall watch their progress with unutterable, be able to barely keep calm. But don't worry, but that when you are ready, I shall appear. Saying this, he suddenly quitted me, fearful perhaps of any change in my sentiments. He must have known me well. I saw him descend the mountain with greater speed than the flight of an eagle, and he was quickly lost among the undulations of the sea of ice. His tale had occupied the whole day, and the sun was on the verge of the horizon when he departed. I knew that I ought to hasten my descent towards the valley, as I soon would be encompassed in darkness, but my heart was heavy and my steps were slow. The labor of winding among the little paths of the mountain and fixing my feet firmly as I advanced perplexed me, occupied as I was by the emotions which the occurrences of the day had produced. Night was far advanced when I came to the halfway resting place and seated myself beside the fountain. The stars shone at intervals and the clouds passed over them, and the dark pines rose above me. And every here and there a broken tree lay on the ground. It was a scene of wonderful solemnity and stirred strange thoughts within me. I wept, and clasping my hands, I exclaimed, "O stars and clouds and winds, ye are all about to mock me. If ye really pity me, wipe all sensation and memory. Let me become as naught. But if not, depart, and leave me in darkness." I mean, man, I was feeling dramatic, I guess. These were wild and miserable thoughts, but I cannot describe to you how the internal twinkling of the stars weighed on me. Oh, stars, can you cut it out, man? I'm trying to think and feel here, and every blast of wind on my ears was like wind and stars, and eventually I was felt so that I fell asleep, and morning dawned, and I headed out, and as the dawn came, I arrived in the village. I took no more rest, but returned immediately to Geneva. I mean, maybe a rest for, a little cafe action, but even in my own heart, I could give no expression to my sensations. They weighed on me with a mountain's weight, in their excess, I just didn't feel great. And then I returned home, and entering my house, I presented myself to the family. My haggard and wild appearance awoke intense alarm. I answered no questions, and scarcely did I speak. I felt as if I was being placed under a ban, as if I had no right to claim their sympathies, as if I more might enjoy companionship with them. Yet thus even I loved them to adoration, and this was my mission. I had to dedicate myself to this task. The prospect of such an occupation made every other circumstance of existence pass before me like a dream, and that thought only had to me the reality of life. Chapter 18. Day after day, week after week passed on my return to Geneva, and I could not collect the courage to recommence my work. I was thinking about the disappointed leaf-based being, yet I was unable to overcome my repugnance to the task which was enjoined me. I found that I could not compose another leaf-based being again, without devoting several months to profound study and laborious disquisition. A lot of work this leaf-based being was asking of me. I had heard of some discoveries having been made by an English philosopher, the knowledge of which was material to my success, and I sometimes thought of obtaining my father's consent to visit England for this purpose. But I clung to every pretense of delay and shrank from taking the first step in an undertaking whose immediate necessity began to appear less and less absolute to me. Promises to a leaf-based being, you know. A change indeed had taken place in me. My vim and vigor, which hitherto had declined, was now much restored, and my spirits, when unchecked by the memory of my unhappy promise, rose proportionally. The more I could forget about that being, the better. My father saw this change with pleasure, and he turned his thoughts towards the best method of eradicating the remains of my melancholy, which every now and then would return by fits, with, frowny faces and tears, like an overcast over the sunshine. And that's most important to me, my sunshine, right? At these moments, I took refuge in the most perfect solitude. I passed whole days on the lake alone in a little boat, watching the clouds and listening to the rippling of the waves. Silent and listless. It's not the life of leisure for me, but some could see it that way. But the fresh air and bright sun seldom failed to restore me to some degree of composure. And on my return, I met the salutations of my friends with a readier smile and a more cheerful heart. It was after my return from one of these rambles that my father, calling me aside, thus addressed me. "Son, I'm happy to remark, my dear son, that you've resumed your former pleasures, laying in the lake, looking at the lake, lazing around the lake, and you seem to be returning to yourself. And yet, you are still unhappy and still avoid our society. For some time I was lost in conjecture as to the cause of this, but yesterday an idea struck me, and if it is well-founded, I conjure you to avow it. Reserve on such a point would not only be useless, but draw down treble frowns on us all." I kind of shook at his exordium, and my father continued, "I confess, my son, that I've always looked forward to your marriage with our dear Elizabeth as the tie of our domestic comfort and the stay of my declining years. You were attached to each other from the earliest infancy. You studied together, appeared in dispositions and tastes entirely suited to one another. But so blind is the experience of man that what I conceived to be the best assistants to my plan have entirely made it go away. You, perhaps, regard her as your sister without any wish that she might become your wife. Nay, you may have met with another whom you love, and considering yourself as bound in honor to Elizabeth, this struggle may occasion the poignant frowns which you appear to feel. My dear father, reassure yourself. I love my cousin tenderly and sincerely. I never saw a woman who excited as Elizabeth does my warmest admiration and affection. My future hopes and prospects are entirely bound up in the expectation of our union. The expectations of your sentiment of this subject, my dear Victor, gives me more pleasure than I have some time experienced. If you feel thus, we shall all be assuredly happy, however present events may cast a gloom over us. But it is this gloom which appears to have taken so strong a hold of your mind that I wish to dissipate. Tell me, therefore, whether you object to an immediate solemnization of marriage. We've been down and out lately. Recent events have drawn us from that everyday tranquility befitting my years. You are younger, yet I do not suppose, possessed as you are of a competent fortune, that an early marriage would at all interfere with any future plans of honor and utility that you may have formed. Do not suppose, however, that I wish to dictate happiness on you, or that a delay on your part would cause me any serious uneasiness. Interpret my words with candor, and answer me, I conjure you, with confidence and sincerity." I listened to my father in silence, and I remained for some time incapable of offering any reply. I resolved rapidly in my mind, and a multitude of thoughts endeavored to arrive at the same conclusion. Alas, to me, the idea of an immediate union with my Elizabeth was one of not good. Like, I was like, no, wait, whoa. I mean, one, I was bound by a solemn promise which I had yet not fulfilled, and I dare not break, but, I wasn't getting around to it either. I mean, if I never did get around to it, what manifold miseries might impend over me and my devoted family? And were those miseries, were they, how much, would they change my mind of procrastinating anyway? Could I enter into a festival with this on my mind, bowing me to the ground? I must perform my engagement and let that leaf-based being depart with his partner before I allowed myself to enjoy the delight of a union from which I expected peace. Maybe this would help me get my act together. It seemed to be my father and I maybe were on the same page. I remembered also the necessity imposed upon me by science of either journeying to England or entering into a long correspondence with those philosophers of that country whose knowledge and discoveries were of indispensable use to me in my present undertaking. The latter method of attaining the desired intelligence was dilatory and unsatisfactory, and besides, I had an insurmountable aversion to the idea of engaging myself in my loathsome task in my father's house, while in habits of familiar intercourse with those I loved. I knew that, 1,000 things could happen when you're creating sentient organic life. Who knew? At the slightest, it could disclose a tale to thrill all connected, but not in a good way. I was aware also that I should often lose all self-command, all capacity of hiding the harrowing sensations that would possess me during the progress of my unearthly occupation, so unearthly yet earthbound. I must absent myself from all I loved while thus employed. Once commenced, it would be quickly achieved, and I might be restored to my family in peace and happiness. My promise fulfilled, the leaf-based being would be gone forever, or so in my fond fancied imagining. Maybe I could do something, I could catch him in a big breeze and blow him away, and that would end him forever. These feelings dictated my answer to my father, where I expressed a wish to visit England, but concealing the true reasons of my request. I clothed my desires under a guise which excited no suspicion, while I urged my desire with an earnestness that easily induced my father to comply. After so long a period of absorbing melancholy, and with various intensity and effects, Papa was glad to find I was capable of taking pleasure in the idea of such a journey, and he hoped that a change of scene and a varied amusement would, before my return, have restored me entirely to myself. I mean, maybe this was all Papa's fault, having me, who was, it's rare I pause here to be like, who am I really? But whatever, the duration of my absence was left to my own choice. A few months, or at most a year, was the period contemplated. One paternal kind of precaution he had taken to ensure my having a companion. Without communicating with me, he had, in concert with Elizabeth, arranged that Clerval should join me in Strasbourg. Clerval. Oh, man. This I wanted to be alone. This interfered with the solitude I coveted and had to cover now for enacting my tasks. But, a friend when I'm in need is a friend I could use indeed. So at the commencement of my journey, the presence of my friend could in no way be an impediment. Somebody had to carry my stuff. And I truly rejoiced that I should be saved from many hours of lonely, maddening reflection. I mean, Clerval was a good listener to me when I was talking to him about me. Nay, Henry might stand between me and the intrusion of the leaf-based being, too. Right? He wouldn't want to bother me if I, was not alone with his abhorrent presence and remind me of my task or to contemplate its progress. To England, therefore, I was bound, and it was understood that my union with Elizabeth should take place immediately upon my return. My father, his age rendered him extremely averse to delay. He said, not again, no more messing about again, like always. How come everybody was focused on my delays and my procrastination, my malaise? For myself, there was one reward I promised myself for my detested toils, one consolation for my unparalleled sufferings. It was the prospect of a day when, enfranchised from this awful this awful result of my brilliance, I might claim Elizabeth and forget the past and my union with her. Maybe I'd even write a song about it. I now made arrangements for my journey, but one feeling I kept with me, which agitated me, man. During my absence, I should leave my friends unconscious of the existence of a leaf-based being that was up to no good. They'd have no cover. Exasperated, he may say, where'd you go? He might be hot of temper, but he had promised to follow me wherever I might go. And would he not accompany me to England? This imagination was in itself but soothing, insomuch as it supposed the safety of my friends. I was agonized with the idea that the possibility that the reverse of this might happen. But through the whole period during which I was thinking about that leaf-based being, compost heap, I allowed myself to be governed by the impulses of the moment, and my present sensations strongly intimated that the fiend would follow me and exempt my family from his machinations. I was in the latter end of September that I again quitted my hometown. My journey had been my own suggestion, and Elizabeth therefore acquiesced, but she was filled with disquiet at the idea of me, never being satisfied, and away from her, the inroads of misery and grief. It had been her care which provided me a companion in Clerval, and yet a man is blind to 1,000 minute circumstances which call forth a woman's sedulous attention. She longed to bid me hasten my return. 1,000 conflicting motions rendered her mute as she bade me a tearful, silent farewell. I threw myself into the carriage that was to convey me away, hardly knowing whither I was going, and careless of what was passing around. I remembered only, and it was with a bitter anguish that I reflected on it, to order that all my materials should be packed and go with me. Filled with my dreary imaginations, I passed through many beautiful and majestic scenes, but my eyes were fixed and unobserving. I could only think of the bourne of my travels and the work which was to occupy me whilst they endured. After some days spent in listless indolence, during which I traversed many leagues, I arrived at Strasbourg, where I waited 2 days for Clerval. Come on, you're supposed to be there waiting for me, man. But he came. Alas, how great was the contrast between us. He was alive to every new scene, joyous when he saw the beauties of the setting sun, and more happy when he beheld it rise and recommence a new day. He pointed out to me the shifting colors of the landscape and the appearances of the sky. This is what it is to live, he cried. How I enjoy existence. But you, my dear Frankenstein, wherefore are you desponding and sorrowful? In truth, I was occupied by gloomy thoughts, and neither saw the descent of the evening star, nor the golden sunrise reflected in the Rhine. And you, my friend, would be far more amused with the journey of Clerval, who observed the scenery with an eye of feeling and delight, that in listening to my reflections, I, a miserable wretch, worried about the, whatever, I had to shut up every avenue to enjoyment. We agreed to descend the Rhine in a boat from Strasbourg to Rotterdam, whence we might take a shipping for London. During this voyage, we passed many willowy islands and saw several beautiful towns. We stayed a day in Mannheim, and on the 5th day, our departure from Strasbourg, we arrived at Mainz. The course of the Rhine below Mainz becomes much more picturesque. The river descends rapidly and winds between hills not high but steep, of beautiful forms. We saw many ruined castles standing on the edges of precipices, surrounded by woods high and inaccessible. This part of the Rhine, indeed, presents a singularly variegated landscape. In one spot you view rugged hills, ruined castles overlooking tremendous precipices, with the dark Rhine rushing beneath, and on the sudden turn of a promontory, flourishing vineyards with green sloping banks and a meandering river and populous towns occupy the scene. We traveled at the time of the vintage and heard the song of the laborers as we glided down the stream. Even I, depressed in mind, and my spirits continually agitated by gloomy feelings, even I was pleased. I lay at the bottom of the boat, and as I gazed on the cloudless blue sky, I seemed to drink in a tranquility to which I had long been a stranger. And if these were my sensations, who can describe those of Henry? He felt as he had been transported to a fairyland and enjoyed a happiness seldom tasted by humans. I have seen, he said, the most beautiful scenes of my own country. I have visited the lakes of Lucerne and Uri, where the snowy mountains descend almost perpendicularly to the water, casting black and impenetrable shades, which would cause a gloomy and mournful appearance were it not for the most verdant islands. Believe the eye by their gay appearance. I have seen this lake agitated by a tempest, and when the wind tore up whirlwinds of water, and gave you an idea of what the waterspout must be on the great ocean, and the waves dashed with fury the base of the mountain, where the priest and his mistress were overwhelmed, where their voices were said to call, and to be heard amid the pauses of the nightly wind. I have seen the mountains of La Valais and the Pays de Vaud, but this country, Victor, pleases me more than all those wonders. The mountains of Switzerland are more majestic and strange, but there is a charm in the banks of this divine river that I never before saw equaled. Look at that castle which overhangs yon precipice, and that also on that island, almost concealed among the foliage of those lovely trees. And now that group of laborers coming up from amid the vines, in the village half hid in the recesses of the mountain. Oh, surely the spirit that inhabits and guards this place has a soul more in harmony with human than those who pile the glacier or retire to the inaccessible peaks of the mountains of their own country. Clerval, beloved friend, even now it delights me to record your words and to dwell on the praise of which you are so eminently deserving. He was being formed in the very poetry of nature. His wild and enthusiastic imagination was chastened by the sensibility of his heart. His soul overflowed with ardent affectations, and his friendship of that devoted and wondrous nature, that world-minded, to teach us to look for only in the imagination. But even human sympathies were not sufficient to satisfy his eager mind. The scenery of external nature, which others regard only with admiration, he loved with ardor. The sounding cataract kept with him like a passion, the tall rock, the mountain, the deep and gloomy wood. Their colors and their forms were then to him an appetite, a feeling and love that had no need of a remoter charm, but by thought supplied or in any interest unborrowed from the eye. That was from Wordsworth's Tintern Abbey. And where does he now exist? Is this gentle and lovely being gone far, far away? Has this mind so replete with ideas, imaginations fanciful and magnificent, which formed a world whose existence depended on its creator, is he still around? Where is he? Does it now only exist in my memory? No, it is not thus. Your form so divinely wrought and beaming with beauty. I don't know where that's at, but your spirit still visits and consoles your unhappy friend. Pardon this gush of sorrow. These ineffectual words are but a slight tribute to the unexampled worth of Henry. He was also good at carrying bags and fetching me things. But it's not as poetic, you know. And listening to my tirades, drying my tears. But the words of Henry, they soothed my heart overflowing with the anguish. I mean, he was like, anytime I was down, he would work with me. But now it creates more anguish, the remembrance of him. But I better proceed with my tale. Beyond Cologne, we descended to the plains of Holland, and we resolved to post the remainder of our way, for the wind was contrary and the stream of the river was too gentle to aid us. Our journey here lost the arising from the beautiful scenery, but we arrived a few days at Rotterdam, whence we proceeded by sea to England. It was on a clear morning in the latter days of December that I first saw the white cliffs of Britain. The banks of the Thames presented a new scene. They were flat but fertile, and almost every town was marked by the remembrance of some story. We saw Tilbury Fort and remembered the Spanish Armada, Gravesend, Woolwich, Greenwich, places which I had heard of even in my country. At length we saw the numerous steeples of London, St. Paul's powerfully towering above all, and the tower famed in the English history. And then I lay for a rest, again in the rocking of my boat. As I got closer and closer, I got sleepier and drifted off. Good night. All right, everybody, it's time to talk about Helix. And you got to keep Helix in mind when you're doing your holiday hosting. And when you're thinking about your family, say, are you going to be comfortable this holiday season, this winter? Because I'm thinking of a couple people in my family that could use that trip to helixsleep.com/sleep to take that Helix sleep quiz. I'm thinking of my brother. I'm thinking of my dad. But I don't know if you have guests coming. What could be better than tucking them in a nice, comfortable Helix? Or as your kids are getting older, maybe it's time to upgrade their mattress as well. Maybe it's a self-gifting time, and you need a Helix. Have you taken the Helix quiz? How's the mattress you're sleeping in now? Was it made for you, your sleep preferences, your feel preferences? Because you've heard me talking about my Helix for years, how it fits my needs because I took that Helix quiz. You know, I sleep on my side, I sleep on my stomach. The Helix quiz matches me each time. I mean, I'm getting ready to embark on a whole new long-term relationship now that I moved with a Helix mattress. And I really miss my Helix Dusk Luxe. It kept me from overheating at night, kept me comfortable whether it was on my side or my stomach or my back. But it's not about one mattress to fit everyone. It's about matching you with a mattress that's going to fit you and your needs or you and your partner's needs. So take that quiz. See helixsleep.com/sleep. You deserve a new bed. Your guests deserve a new bed. And of course, Helix has an amazing deal for our listeners. So go to helixsleep.com/sleep for 27% off site-wide during their Black Friday sale. This offer is exclusive for listeners of Sleep With Me. That's helixsleep.com/sleep for this exclusive offer. 27% off site-wide. Make sure you enter our show name after checkout so they know we sent you. That's helixsleep.com/sleep. Thanks, everybody.